Okay. I think we can now get started. Other people will join us on the way. So let me start by saying good evening, everyone. Distinguished intellectuals from universities in Malawi and across the globe. Actually, it is my great pleasure to warmly welcome you to the second installment of our public lecture series. This evening, we convene to engage in a vital conversation that centers on the theme, how can we collectively fix our broken judicial system? Specifically, how can we end corruption in the judiciary? And our speakers titled the session today, Corruption in the Legal Profession, a Barrier to Livelihood in Malawi. Just for the background, our inaugural lecture focused on fostering dialogue with the members of diaspora like me, exploring shared perspectives and strategies to ensure or to address the critical issues from afar. And that session, I promise you, was a remarkable success. And we're excited to build on that momentum even tonight. And I just want to say something. We are also especially honored that today's lecture is being broadcast live on Facebook. And I encourage you to visit my page. My Facebook page is Washington Mwenye, and share the live stream with those who are unable to join the Zoom with us tonight. So before we kick off, let's revisit a few house rules to ensure a smooth session tonight. I'm sorry, it's pretty cold here, so my camera is kind of like foggy. You can't see, but I'll keep on cleaning my camera later and then. So number one, house rules. Please make sure your microphone is muted during the lecture. Number two, if you have a question, kindly type it into the chat box. And at the end of the session, microphones will be unmuted. I will do that for direct, and that's going to be for direct comments, questions, and anything you want to talk or to say. We plan to have this lecture, or it's scheduled to run for about an hour. So without further ado, please join me, ladies and gentlemen, in welcoming our esteemed main speaker, a PhD student in law, a dedicated human rights defender, Mr. Alexious E.S. Kamangila. Let's dive into this critical discussion together. Thank you. Your turn, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mwenye. I don't know if I'm able to share, but I've sent you the request for me to share. I would like to thank everyone for joining this conversation. It's an honor, and it's my humble privilege to share my views and my thoughts and some things that I've researched on, and I'm still researching. This is work in progress as regards corruption in the legal profession. So when this conversation was beginning, I thought that this was going to be a conversation on corruption in the judiciary. But over time, what has come up is that it has developed. The idea is developing into actually a conversation on the corruption in the legal profession. So it's broader. That it's not just about the judiciary actually, but it's the legal profession as such. I think I can you see my PowerPoint presentation? Yeah, perfect. I'm trying to start the slideshow. Yes, thank you very much indeed. So I have very little time. How much time do I have, Dr. Mwenye?
So we'll give you 30 minutes to at least 35 minutes if give and take.
No, thank you very much. So I'm going to have a conversation in relation to corruption in the legal profession and how that has affected livelihood in Malawi. And generally, livelihood is a conversation on development, but I'm thinking about development beyond just development of the country, but individual life development. So the methodology will be discussed. We'll have a conversation on normalization of abnormality. We'll talk about, of course, the judiciary in Malawi, access to justice, development, and the way forward. And then we'll conclude. So as I indicated, this is a conversation that is developing. And every day, there are new events that are coming up, which also so many developments coming up. But if I may, as an introduction, Dr. Mwenye, I hope we are recording. Last time we had a challenge, but I just wanted to begin with introduction in terms of this conversation. So Malawi's history is not too unique to other African countries when it comes to colonization. So we were colonized, and then later on we started ruling ourselves in the 60s, which is common to other countries. But we had the one-party system. And then in 1992, the pastorata, and then the events that followed thereafter, we changed from one-party to multi-party democracy. Now, in this introduction, the critical part is what happened in 1994 or 1993, 1994. When we were changing from one-party rule to multi-party democracy, there was an overall change as regards to the parliament. We had new parliamentarians. Obviously, we had others from MCP, but the change, the fundamental change was that there was not only MCP, there were also other political parties. In the past, the whole parliament belonged to one party. So that was a very fundamental transition, an overall change. The other change that happened was in the executive. We saw that the cabinet was different, obviously different president and different individuals from the past. And obviously, there was kind of a political landscape which people would then start holding the executive accountable, as it were, looking at the constitution that we had adopted. Now, the only institution that maintained the kind of the same safeguards, the kind of the same guards, was the judiciary. And so I'm trying to start by suggesting that do we adopt a democratic judiciary? And so that is something that we will establish, but also all of us can have an idea or our own perception. But our constitution, the way it was drafted in a way where a judiciary should be accountable. So beginning with section 12 of the constitution, the whole section, but specifically section subsection 1, paragraph C, it does provide for the accountability to ensure that power that is being exercised is upon trust. So any public power that one exercises is exercised on trust of the people of Malawi. And that kind of power has to be exercised in an open and transparent manner, which allows people to be accountable in terms of how public officers, including the judges, are exercising. So this already speaks to the point of holding judiciary accountable. And the same constitution under section 116 and 119, it did provide for the way within which the judiciary should be held accountable. Now, whereas the executive and the parliament does have a period within which, whatever the case, every 5 years they are demanded to be held accountable. That is over and above every now and then where they are held accountable, where the president is called to parliament to answer. Every parliamentary session, these cabinet ministers do address the people through parliament, presentation of different reports and all that, and all those kind of forms, including the media, holding them accountable. The judiciary seemed to have been left out as an institution that cannot be held accountable. And over years, something that the Constitution never allowed became normalized and became something that was normalized. But when you look at section 116, it creates the Judicial Service Commission. And the purpose of the Judicial Service Commission is to regulate judicial officers. And that regulation includes holding them accountable for their actions. So within the judiciary, by this section, it then has it created two ways of holding judicial officers accountable. One, within the appeal structure. So if you have a case that has been heard in the magistrate, maybe lower magistrate, and then you can go to the maybe first grade, then resident magistrate, but as well the High Court and the Supreme Court. So the appeal system is one of the key ways within which the judiciary holds itself accountable. But outside the court, outside the judicial officers themselves, the Judicial Service Commission was created for that purpose of holding the judiciary, the judicial officers accountable. And the law on section 119 is actually very, very, it opens room for more scrutiny than actually we would have wished, because it says that someone can be impeached based on incompetence and misbehavior. That's the word, that's the language that the Constitution uses. Now, if you just imagine how many judicial officers have misbehaved, there are many, you know. If you just imagine how many judicial officers can be said to have been incompetent in their performance, there are a number. But when you look back and look at the history over the years, it's only perhaps within the wake of the Judicial Service Commission, only the magistrates have been been taken to task, and no judge has been taken to task. There was an attempt, the popular case of Justice Manyungwa, who was taken through the process of being heard by the Judicial Service Commission, evidence being presented. But what came out was clear that there was no desire to hold this judicial officer accountable, despite clear evidence. So now, when you start hearing stories to say there's no evidence, it's not a new kind of way of running away from accountability. This is something that has been there, where the judiciary, where the people that benefit from the corruption within the judiciary will say there's no evidence. So it's just something that we can conclude on the background that corruption has been rampant in the judiciary. If you engage any lawyer, if you engage any judicial officer, they will tell you, they will confide, and they will confirm that there's corruption in the judiciary. But we don't even need a lawyer or a judicial officer to confirm this. We as citizens, we can see clearly, and we have our own personal experiences on how corruption is rampant in the judiciary. But if that's not the case, we have examples on record in the media, but also even in publications, peer-reviewed journals that shows and reviews the corruption in the judiciary in Malawi, not just in Africa. Now, as we begin, as a part of background, it is critical for us to realize that we cannot end corruption if we do not have ethical leadership and systematic reform. And this is a very critical point as we begin, that ethical leadership and systematic reform is critical. So for instance, how we appoint judges, how do we appoint our judges? Who appoints these judges? What processes is done? So all those things will come out as we continue to our conversation. I just wanted to share to everyone that this paper, this research is being done on the basis of moving from rhetoric to practice. So we want to get away from rhetoric to action. And so I'll use the social legal theory and also the doctrinal, because there's so much data on the ground, and so it needs to be do desk research, but also on the ground we'll do investigation. Now, the first point that we can talk with regard to corruption is that we need to wake up from the normalization of the abnormalities. So there have been some practices and some things that are abnormal, but because of years of practice, and that's something that we have been seeing, we have normalized such conduct. Now, we have tried to define corruption. There are just a few words that I wanted to highlight, that corruption is defined as an act of receiving or gratification with corrupt intent to do or forbear an act. And so Section 3 of the Corrupt Practices Act defines what a corrupt practice is. I won't go to that point because everyone can make reference to that and look. But I wanted to emphasize Section 3, subsection B, that talks about influence peddling, and Section C, that talks about the extortion of an advantage. Before I forget, when you look at the Penal Code, I think Section 90, if not Section 90, there should be a section in there that defines what corruption is as an offense under the laws of Malawi. But before I leave on the normalization of abnormalities, I wanted to highlight what an advantage is. So the law defines what an advantage is under Corrupt Practices Act. So it says that any benefit, service, enjoyment, or gratification, whether direct or indirect, very critical, whether direct or indirect, and includes a payment, whether in cash or in kind, or any reliable deduction, concession, or loan, and any condition or circumstances that puts one person, highlight one person or a class of persons in a favorable position over another. So it can be a tribe, it can be people from a district, it can be people from a particular region. Now, when you just look at what an advantage is and how the law under Section 3 defines what a corrupt practice is, how many instances can we say corruption can be defined, can be identified? There can be an alarm of corruption. So many times, there will be so many instances, so many events, so many experiences that we have had as a people. Now, as I said, corruption is an everyday conversation, but we need to move from the rhetoric because we have been talking about it, but no action taken. This reminds me of an example that a professor gives of a person that is basically dancing, a Ngoni dancer, you know what they wear, the regalia, and then the regalia fails, and then they carry, and then 5 times or 4 times the regalia fails, but they keep on just placing the regalia back. What the professor teaches in that example is an example of assessing, analyzing, but failure to take action. So the 3 A's are very important. In Malawi, we assess, we analyze, but we don't take action. So that's why you realize that we have so much documentation. We have plans, excellent plans. If you look at the political parties, all of them, they've got brilliant manifestos or good manifestos. I shouldn't say brilliant, but good manifestos at least. But the implementation there, the action is what lacks. So if we talk about corruption, if we talk about plans, how do we save Malawi this year? You know, from November to November next year, what plans we have on the ground? There will be beautiful plans. There will be beautiful, ideas, but the implementation becomes problematic. Now, I wanted to just for us to have these questions as we are discussing corruption. So who indulges in corrupt practices? Who indulges in corruption? Is it the politician? Perhaps all of us are okay. We are not corrupt, you know. Is it if it is the corruption? If the corruption is by politicians alone, or the politicians are the masters of corruption? Is a ballot a solution to corruption? That's the first question. The second question is who is responsible to fight corruption? Very, very important. Who is responsible to fight corruption? Is it Alexious? Is it Alexious who is responsible? Okay. Or is it people that are appointed by the politicians to fight? Is it SCB that is responsible to fight corruption? We need to have these questions in our head every day when we think about corruption. And then the final question is, what happens when a corrupt practice happens? Or what happens when corruption occurs, or when we identify that the corruption has happened? If someone is found to have been corrupt, what happens? Has SCB been fighting corruption, or it has been acting corruption fighting or acting like it's fighting corruption? A very important supporting question. We need to think about Malawi's judiciary. Is it corrupt? So the years of, or it's just years of accusation. There's no evidence. The point that I raised earlier on, and judges, leadership in the judiciary at certain platforms, like the last Malawi Law Society CPD, where we're discussing corruption from the bar to the bench. The representative of the judiciary said there is so much accusation, but there's no evidence. I was sad when I heard that, but that's what the representative of the judiciary said. You know, now I wanted to talk about this issue of now. I'll not speak about the actual case because I think it will take my time, and it's a case that we'll have time to discuss because the things are still coming out in this case. But I think the major issue that I wanted to raise on affordable input program is that what is this affordable input program? I want to challenge you intellectuals, my fellow intellectuals, my seniors on this public lecture. If you follow the money comes from government coffers. It comes, actually, when I say government, it comes from your tax. It comes from donor partners who are funding these programs. But that money, if you follow it, it goes back to the pockets of politicians, the agents of the politicians. Very little money goes to the poor. So this is my assignment to everyone, all the intellectuals on this group. I'm challenging you that 60–70% of the money that is being invested in affordable input program, it goes back to the pockets of the politicians. It goes back to the pockets of the rich. It does not go to the person in the village. It does not go to the farm as it's meant to. And that's why one of the reasons why it has failed. Every year, this program, each and every year, there's a scandal to it. There's a scandal, and the scandal is something that is always waiting. We actually know right now there's a company that is being engaged by government, and there are people that are getting commissions, and then the company who fail to provide the affordable farm products, and then the affordable fertilizer, and then later on, 2 or 3 years, whether MCP is going to be in power, or DBB comes into power, or MCP or Mbakuwa comes into power, that company over the year, it is going to sue government. But we would have lost the money, which was meant for affordable for this year. But 3–4 years from now, that very company is going to sue government, and they're going to win the case, and they're going to be paid money, including compound interest. I will leave that to you intellectuals. This is just an example that I wanted to share in regards to how corruption affects each and every part of our life. We're talking about affordable input, but here is a story on land due tenure agree. Our land, how we have managed our land, it has been largely affected by corruption. The law is as if it doesn't matter whether we have a bad law, a good law. It's something that doesn't matter in Malawi. And that's something that should make all of us angry, should make all of us worried, and should make all of us to wake up and act. The situation is there without doubt. The situation is bad. We are in ICU, but we can't afford to lose hope. We can't afford to surrender. We can't afford to say, there's nothing important. In fact, the reason why we haven't moved over the past 30 years since my departed democracy is because of the fact of giving up, surrendering. And the people that surrender are people that actually are hit worse. But the people that are responsible to act, they don't act because they are benefiting from the chaos. They are benefiting from the lack of rule of law. And I'll make an argument to say, or I'm making an argument to say, we have not practiced democracy. And the reason is that we have not followed rule of law. And you can't talk about democracy if there's no rule of law. And the heart of law in Malawi begins as a pillar, Section 12 of the Constitution of Malawi, and all other provisions that support accountability when it comes to public officer exercising power. I wanted to quickly jump to discuss the concept of corruption and slave trade for us to have an idea. Now, when you look at the conversation that has been going on, you see that there have been a lot of opposition to the conversation on corruption, and they will be oppressors. Now, who are oppressors? Oppressors are people who are being oppressed, but to the extent where they can breathe, to the extent where they can have a little bit of, they can taste good life. They can afford to go to the lake, but they can just afford to go to the lake to be there a day or two, and they can't go to any other lake. They have to choose specific. These are oppressors who cannot afford to maintain their car, so their car breaks down here and there now and then, not because the car is a bad car, but they can't afford, to properly maintain their car and all that. But there are other oppressors who might have power, exercise power, but that power is exercised on borrowed time. And when the owners of the power, so in Malawi, we have the hegemonic cliques, the families that hold power in this country. And that's a conversation for another day. Yeah. But you can see around the families. So I wanted to relate this to corruption, that as corruption is like slavery. You have some people who actually are in control, and then they put other people to control others. And the people that are put in place and given some power, they are the worst. I refer to them as the house nigger. When you look at the history of slave trade, the delay to emancipation of the slave was largely because of this house nigger. The slave was living in the house of the master. He felt that he was responsible to protect the master. He actually was the one that made sure that his friends should not escape. In fact, he was the harshest. He was the one who was causing more trouble to his fellow slaves. And that's exactly what you see. I am inspired by the book, Why We Can't Wait by Martin Luther King. I would encourage you intellectuals to read and then look at what is happening in Malawi. You exactly see what's going on. When people say the methods that are being used are bad, but the cause is correct, you understand why people would say the methods are wrong. It's because they're effective. You should also pay some attention. Some education is not in the books or is not in the academic books. Sometimes you should read some silly books, watch some silly movies like Django Unchained. Django Unchained is one of the great script movies. When you watch the movie, you should pay attention to the script and what's being said. This house nigger comes clear in that movie. 12 Years a Slave, and The Great Debaters is one of the best movies when it comes to oppression and fighting oppression. Now, I just wanted to highlight, because my time, I do not have much time, but corruption in the health sector. When you look at what I was saying or what we're discussing when it comes to IIP, it goes together with, when you look at the health sector in Malawi, there's so much money that comes from government, from donors, but how that money, where that money goes is where the challenge is. Without doubt, there's still a lot of gap. The money is not enough, but this little money, where does this little money go? Where is it being invested? And all that. So I was there discussing issues of medical care. 2 days ago, we were discussing dialysis machine, that in Malawi, we have only 2 dialysis machines. We are very sad because some of the things that we don't have are things that we should have had 20 years ago. We just need a leader that wants to improve things. We don't have that leader yet. And I'm not apologetic about that. Now, I wanted to discuss, and this is, so let me just come there. The issue of corruption is not about MCP. Please, The issue of corruption is about the political establishment and anyone in Malawi. It's about DPP, that institution is corrupt. It's about UTM, there's corruption that has happened through UTM, there's corruption that has happened through People's Party, there's corruption that has happened through UDF and all the other parties that have tested power in Malawi or has tested something akin to power. The point is that we need to be united as Malawi and for Malawi, whether you belong to what party, whether you belong to which party, which colors you wear. It's very important to support political parties if you believe in their whatever they are doing, and you can subscribe. But also, you don't need to support a political party if you don't believe in whatever they are subscribing. But beyond political parties, we should support Malawi as a country. So I was giving examples of how corruption results into deaths that should have been avoided. So there are a number of ways: basic healthcare system, issues of the roads accidents. Most of the accidents that we have in Malawi, apart from the fact that we have death traps as roads, but those accidents, people should have survived if we had a responsive medical care system. If we had a quick, even the accident that we experienced as a nation, how we responded to the accident, Chilima's accident, you will see the gaps in terms of responsive medical care, emergency response. Do we have emergency response? Medical people here will tell you we do, but what happens? How are we recording? If we do not investigate deaths in Malawi, when somebody has died, we're people that say, Mungu anatani godi, wanafuna kuti munthu akhale ni moyo koma wamutenga. God loved him the most. We love this person, but God loved. We are people that don't investigate. Even most of the murder cases. As a lawyer myself, I've done a number of murder cases. I've worked in death penalty work, and within that sector, you will see how investigations on the right to life, where a life has been lost, it's chaotic, and I don't want to get into there because there's so much that I can talk about. I just wanted to ask, in the health sector, where are the billions of the COVID-19? What happened to that money? Where are we in terms of prosecution? Now, to the heart of the conversation, Malawi's judiciary. The Section 103, what it does is gives the judiciary the powers to exercise authority exclusively, very important, to exclusively and exercise this power. Basically, that's the section that provides independence of the judiciary and doesn't want the judiciary to be interfered with. Now, here, we should think what the law requires is judicial officers to decide matters based on facts and law. So as long as the judicial officer decides matters based on law and facts, they should do that exclusively. But if someone is receiving money, if someone is considering that this person is coming from my village, or this person is a son or a daughter of my friend, and decides cases on that, they can't then come to claim independence of the judiciary. There's no independence there because they are not deciding matters based on the law and facts. So the question that I was raising is independence versus accountability. That accountability is not a threat to independence, and independence does not happen exclusive of accountability. And so you will see that in 2020, the lawyers did demonstrate during DPP regime, where we were opposing a decision that the executive had done to send the Chief Justice then and the most senior member of the Supreme Court to forced leave. And we are saying this was an interference of the judiciary. And we helped the judiciary to keep intact. And you saw how that was important in the days that it followed. Of course, other people with political influences and what happened later on, they would say, was that really useful for this country? But it was. The rule of law has to be adhered to, no matter who it benefits at the end of the day or who it affects. And that's very critical, where we should never lose sight. No matter, even if rule of law give us wrong leaders, but if we are following rule of law, that's democracy. That's what we want. And people speak childishly when they say we will better off to have a dictator, benevolent dictator. There's nothing like a benevolent dictator, and we should pay attention to what we wish for ourselves. So now, I was just discussing issues about appeal system as a way of providing accountability and all that. But how do you trust appeal as a way of holding the judiciary accountable when corruption also does affect the appeal system? The Supreme Court itself is affected by corruption. There's limited, the High Court obviously is also affected by corruption, and any part of the judiciary, the whole judiciary is affected by corruption. And also there's limited capacity for most litigants. In most places in Malawi, people do not have money to start a case and then lose and then appeal and then appeal. There's limited money, and it's because of our economy. And the delays that are in the judiciary obviously makes an appeal just a right that is on paper. Now, I wanted us to think of corruption as a snake, and that head of that snake is the judiciary. The body of that snake is the parliament, while the tail, the larger part of the tail, is the executive. Now, the judiciary, if we want to end corruption in Malawi, we have to end corruption in judiciary. We have to deal with corruption in the judiciary. But when you look at this snake, the executive is a tail. But that's where the poison comes. Some people will say, why the executive? The poison has to come from somewhere, and the executive is the one that spreads the poison, because it's responsible for choosing the judges, but also the executive has a huge influence on parliament, and that has never been more than true. Like in the last years, in the last 4 years, the current government has had a huge influence on parliament. We have seen that. We don't need to face more. Now, in terms of, so we're discussing corruption in the judiciary. We have talked about how corruption is. I recognizing that it's not only the judiciary, but the judiciary is a critical aspect of ending corruption, or a contributor of the status quo in Malawi. So I just wanted us to think of one example of blatant impunity. The challenge that we have is that we allow things that should never happen to continue happening. And when you look at the election case, the 2020 election, so my question to intellectuals is that when you look at that election, there was a proof that there was irregularities to the criminal fraud, to the extent of criminal fraud. But since 2020, no one has been prosecuted and convicted for crimes of fraud, criminal fraud in the election of 2020. Now, one should ask themselves, why is that the case? If indeed there was a fraud that undermined the integrity of that election. And further, if there's no accountability, how are we sure that, why should people not do the same in 2025, in the general election that is coming? When you look at the Sata case, how Martha Chizuma was arrested, how right now the SCB doesn't have a director. And we are seeing now blatant impunity. It can never be as blatant as it is beyond what we are seeing now, where the ombudsman is going to investigate the process of appointing SCB director. When you look at that case, when you look at what is happening at the moment, not yesterday, not last month, right now, you can see the blatant impunity in Malawi. Now, I wanted just to give examples, but I don't have time. So let me just, the time that I'm stealing from you, let me just show some of the cases. When you look at DBB regime, there were a number of key cases of corruption that have not been dealt with, even with this regime. Now, there was the cement gate, there was the story of procurement in the Batatawala case, and the examples, what was happening in that case, you can relate to what is happening right now. You can relate to some other cases that will happen next year. I can predict that. When you look at the 145 million which DPP got from somebody that was being prosecuted and demanded to basically be given back by the Law Society. Now, I wanted to, somebody is distracting me. There are also examples of the Tonsi Alliance and all those kind of examples. You can see the SATA is coming out and all those. But I wanted to just say that the poisonous snake that I express up there is something that continues to reinvent itself. It just changes colors. So if you look, for example, in South Africa, just an example, ANC has so much issues of corruption. When Zuma moved out and started his own party, the people that joined him had people that were corrupt, had people that were answering cases. When you look at Kamuzu, Muluzi, Bingo Mtalika, Joyce Banda, APM, Dr. Lazi, you see all corrupt people are connected to these people. All of them, no exclusion, no exception. If you look at UTM, the people that followed Kidima, Kariad has cases. Vipia, if you look at Vipia, there are a lot of cases. And I was laughing to say, this case where they are saying Kariad wanted to kill the president, stronger cases if these people really wanted to prosecute and to pursue justice, but now we're talking about Kabambe, there will be cases that people will be saying, no, but when it was this and all that, I know I don't have time, but I wanted to discuss issues of justice, to say what justice is we need to find out what does it do. Does it punish? Does it deter? Does it cure? Does it repair? Does it transform? Who is it for? Is it for the powerful, for the minority? Where do we get justice? Is it politics? Is it media? And that we should look at procedural, substantive justice. We should look at symbolic and participatory justice. And then there are examples of the current issues that are happening right now, which we can discuss. But I wanted to say that as an example of blatant corruption or blatant impunity, you'd see that the filling station case from last year, there was clear case of corruption because that was beyond incompetence. And so when you look around all those cases, when you look at around examples of the Chief Justice failure to act despite being given complaints on Justice Manda, and the Chief Justice failure to declare a conflict of interest, when you look at how Justice of Appeal Chugoba has handled himself in many instances, injunctions that are just staying for years, the plastic case, the Ameda case, when you look at all those two other judges, Justice Madise, J.A. Kapanda, and there's as well as the High Court Judge Nyirenda, you find that there are issues that we are basically legitimatizing injustice. And IRC is one example where we have slept as a country. I just wanted I had a number of examples of things that come out in Malawi, but we don't do anything. But let me conclude to say that corruption in the judiciary is the heart of Malawi's palaces to the systems, and that as a society, our society is not merit-based, it's not hard work or merit-based, and that breeds corruption. And earlier on, we did discuss the importance of having systematic, ensuring that you put the right leadership, ethical leadership. Do we have ethical leadership? Obviously, no. So we have fertilized corruption within how we operate, and that actually paralyzes service provision in a country. And then you have judges and lawyers that have got a great role to play, but it's not only lawyers, it's not only judges, it's everyone. And then the future we want is our choice. In Mfondo, ndipo anthu amene amapanga zinyengo ndi ziphuphu ndi anthu ankhanza, ndipo ndi anthu oyipa. You shouldn't be kind to them. Never be kind to corruption or the corrupt people. If there are any questions I'll be happy to answer. Thank you very much for your attention. Back to you, Dr. Mwenye. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And I think before we move on, let me just apologize what was happening on the slides at the end of your presentation. Antwena amene ali akumva kuwawa, akumva peni ni ma presentation amenewa. They are coming in just to distract, komanso kuti asokoneze. Ndiye, that's not from us, and we reported that person, we removed that person right away. That was not intentional. Again, let me say this, that a special thank you goes out to you, our main speaker, you know, a PhD student and a defender of human rights, Mr. Alexious E.S. Kamangila. I normally call you as Counsel. This is an eye-opener. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and thought-provoking perspectives. You know, your insights really inspires us to think critically and collaboratively, thinking about what could be the way forward, what needs to be done, what can we do, what's our role that we can play. So ladies and gentlemen, as we continue to the end of today's public lecture, this insightful session, I want to extend my also gratitude, this is heartfelt gratitude to all of you, the intellectual fraternity, for active participation, because I see lots of comments, questions in the chat. We are going to go through those. And I'll also give you a chance. If you want to open your mic, all you have to do is raise a hand, and I'm going to ask you to open the mic. I don't want everyone just to open the mic at the same time. Then it's going to be a confusion, okay? So the discussion that we've just had on how we can collectively fix our broken judicial system, more specifically to say, how can we end corruption in the judiciary, are not just conversation, but this is a call to action, like Kamangila has said. It's for all of us, not only Alexious Kamangila, not only me, but it's a collective effort. Ndiye ndofuna ndikupempheni nonse kuti tikabwera chonchi, tikamva zinthu ngati zimenezo maino bambo, tiziganizira kuti kodi ineyo ndipangapo chani. Chifukwa nkhondoyi si ya munthu mmodzi, ndi anthu tonse. Ndiye ndisanapite kumapeto, I think we may have two speakers. I'm not sure if they are available tonight. Let me ask here. Okay, I see hands here. People are raising hands. You can raise your hand if you have a question, so we can take those questions. And Alexious, I think you can also go ahead and request to open your mic. You can just leave your mic open just to make sure that if they ask questions, you can, so that we just answer them. Right, looking for the hands. Do we have any hands raised? Questions, comments? And I see people on Facebook as well. If you're on Facebook watching us live, please go ahead, ask your questions. Tifu Samafsuameneo, Alexious Aripompa, Adian Keso, and Anafunsa. Let me take this advantage, Alexious, if you can hear me. I don't know if you are able to unmute your mic now. Okay, not yet. Okay, let me see here what we can do. One moment. Okay. There we go.
Thank you.
Okay, good. So it came in as a rude question, but not a rude question. I like to deal with these kind of questions when they're coming straight, right? Because it brings clarity. The question is, Kodi Alexious Kamangila, akukutumani ndani? Are you behind? Is someone behind you, or is some other people sponsoring you to bring all this? That was the question, while we are waiting for other questions. I think your screen is frozen. If you can hear us, we can't hear you. Okay, while we are waiting for Alexious, let me just read a few comments here. I don't know if that was
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, now we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think some people are really trying to mess up with our lecture.
Yeah.
It's a very good question. I think I doing a public duty right now. I also I can be held accountable under Section 12. So indeed, I've got people that are sending me. Alipo amene akundituma ndithu. And amene akundituma ineyo ndi anthu osauka amene akuvutika ku Malawi. You know, anthu amene mukundisata bwino kapena mukudziwa bwino ndakhala ndikuyimira anthu ulere kwa nthawi yambiri pali makeso ngati muli nchidwi za ku judiciary mutha kuona makesi amene ndakhala ndikuyimira tangomaliza skulu ndakhala ndikutulusa anthu kundende ndakhala I know injustice and I know how it affects disproportionately against the poor, against those people that can't afford. So it is these people that have sent me. It is my conviction also that things can change, that we shouldn't be hopeless. All we need to do is to take action and call a spade its name, you know, to call a spade as a spade. And we need to take action as soon as yesterday. And that's the motivation that I have. And obviously the suffering of the people in Malawi are the ones that are sending me. I'm not a politician. I don't intend to become a politician in the next decade or so. So my intentions are basically to contribute if I'm given a chance. And the chance that I'm saying if I'm given is a chance that I have to create myself. And every Malawian at every corner in your own space, get your own chance, fight corruption, and contribute. I want us to think about a generational change, not to think about 5 years or to think about how we, DBB and how AP, MCBs into the Mahinda joint. No, we should think about when we are dead, what kind of structures are we going to live? What kind of country are we going to live? Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And thank you so much for making that, for clarifying that, because that was a question that came in from the Facebook Live. Another question here. Let me open the mic from Patso Jumbe. Your mic is now open. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Thanks so much for having me. Actually, it's not a question, it's a comment rather. Is that okay?
Yes, please go ahead.
All right. Funso limene afunsidwa Kamangilalo kwa ineyo ndi funso lopweteka kwambiri. As a Malawian, amene timaona injustice every single day, as a business person, as a woman, as a citizen, ndikuimva funso lokupweteka kwambiri because I really feel kunena kuti palibe Malawi amene amadzuka ndikunena kuti kwathu kuno kulibe corruption. It doesn't take Alexious kuti atiuze kunena kuti kuno kuli corruption. And the corruption here, it affects our lives. Most of us are made in productive years at. It means akutitengera economic development. Akutitengera a chance to actively participate in developing our country. And kwa ineyo munthu amene ndimakhulupirira kunena kuti kwathu ndikunoko ku Malawi, and my ancestors are also very important to me. Ndimaona kuti ndi udindo wambiri kupanga build pa zimene makolo athu anapanga build to live a society imene ifeyo tinkasiria kunena kuti mina tikupita kuma movies tikupita ukuti. It doesn't make any sense kuti Malawi lero we've got a democracy koma tizithawira kunja, because when you go to immigration umaona an exodus of young people, and kwa ineyo that's a very painful thing. Because if we don't change anything as Malawians, tizikhala kumapita bekunja, but anthu amene takhala kumapita kunja tikudziwa kuna tikapita kunja kuja anthu amadziona kuti ndife anthu aku dziko losauka. So you're not respected. We need to change our identity, and that's upon us. So it doesn't take a politician. Koma ifeyo so tifunika kuti tisinthe maganizidwe athu, and it's very important. Kupanga vote is not the only thing. The most important is to hold our institutions accountable. Ngati anthu tikulephera kupita ku khoti ndikupeza zigamulo mwansanga, it means kunena anthu amene akutipondereza akutichotsera ufulu wathu, and tikulephera kukhala anthu omasuka mu dziko lathu lomwe. Zikomo kwambiri.
Thank you so much, Patso Jumbe, for your comment. And I'm going to open another mic for Charles Govert. Charles Govert, you may now go ahead and unmute yourself. What question do you have?
Yes, thank you, Alexious. Thank you, the moderator. Thank you, everybody who is listening.
Charles Govert, we cannot hear you.
Oh, but
Yes,
I'm
go
open.
ahead. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah, I'm saying I'm trying to coordinate an activity whereby we are writing 3 petitions to the presidency, to Parliament, and to the Judiciary Service Commission to investigate judges, to review the Constitution, and making sure that Parliament takes up its responsibilities in the environment that we have now. And probably finally, we would want to draft a citizen manifesto, which the new members of Parliament must sign to. Now, in this process, especially as we are preparing the petition for the Judiciary Service Commission, we've gathered a lot of evidence. People have submitted evidence. But what we have seen happening now is that lawyers involved in the corruption are now threatening the people who are complaining about the injustice, threatening them with lawsuits. How do we handle that? There is injustice there, people are complaining, and lawyers are coming back to use the same corrupt system to suppress presentation of evidence. What can we do about it? Secondly, we've got these odd cases. Like we have a case, we have a family case that was lodged in 2003 under Justice Twere. Now, 20 years down the line, no judgment was given, everything was done. And when Justice Twere was leaving, he actually took the file. Okay? How do we resolve such cases where there is this injustice and the people were playing around it to grab a filling station from us there at Lunzu when it was actually owned by my father? They thought they could just grab it like that. So how can you handle such cases, that these odd cases whose justices have retired and they have continued to do injustice? For example, the Chizuma inquiry was headed by the same Justice Twere, who is corrupt. How can we continue saying that the Chizuma report, the Chizuma Commission report, is valid, which was delivered by a judge who is corrupt? Thank you.
We appreciate you, Charles Emu Govert, for your comment and ended question. Let me ask for a comment from Alexious. Alexious, do you have any comment from that? I mean, I like the presentation of the snake, the whole scenario, where you have the head is the judicial, then you've got the legislator, and you've got the executive. I think that tallies with the what Govert was also asking. But let me give you a chance, Alexious, if you have anything to comment or answer.
No, thank you very much, Govert, because you are doing something about this situation. You are galvanizing citizens, and it's very important. You know, it's critical, and I've had an opportunity to see some of the work that you're doing. I'm impressed, but it's important that beyond the planning, beyond the strategies, there should be implementation right away. Now, on the question that you asked in regards to clients who have complaints being threatened with lawsuits, what people must know is that change is not given. You fight for change. And so what it means fighting for change is that when you want things to change, the people that are benefiting from the chaos, the people that are benefiting from the corruption in the legal profession who fight, because that's their livelihood. In fact, the criminals feel entitled to criminality. The judicial officers, my judge, my magistrate, the lawyers that are corrupt, they feel entitled with the money that they're sharing. You don't need to go far. Just watch these lawyers, the life that they live, the extravagant life that they live, and how they actually undermine your hard work, you Malawians, and how many Kamangila. Even in the legal profession, majority of lawyers are working hard without getting the fruits of their work, the fruits of the litigation. My lawyer and Zeru, brilliant lawyers, spend the night preparing for cases. And we know where these lawyers drink. We know where Agamaliza Mone, my filling station, I'm a lawyer. magalimoto amapita kumeneko and opanda ma number plate, but we know these cars are from the judiciary. We have all the evidence. So people think, first of all, they think akubisala masopena amakhala kuti they give us a middle finger. Kind of attitude. And that's what they're doing by trying to sue you. But look, I've been sued myself. You know, I'm in court right now. On Monday, my lawyers will be going to court to do an application for the case because I stay in Blantyre. My lawyers are in Blantyre. The judge who is suing me is in Blantyre. His lawyers are in Blantyre, but they went all the way to Lilongwe. What do you think they were doing in Lilongwe? Corruption. They were looking for their fellow corrupt judge. And this is a judge who, Charles Govard, I can challenge you. In the complaints you have received, you find people complaining about Justice Ndeza. And Justice Ndeza, from Magistrate Court, he has so many cases of corruption. Now, my point is that you should not, in fact, ngataku sumirani, inuyo, ngataku opyezani, ngataku sumirani. Nekuti zimene kupanga zodi ziteka. So that's the time, more fire. We ponda bene one day ponding father. It's not time to come because, dude, guys, what you must know, Amalawi anzanga. Njoka, sitima imenya makofi. Njoka siti supula chikopa. Tima pa, tima dula mutu. The reason is, it's better off for us to have not started the battle of corruption. Koma papa, tikangopanda, kwa manga, kwa panga zote amangidwa antamenyo, kwacho sesa mu judiciary utachoke ose osari kwacho se Fatima Diana. No, I mean, if you know, let me open my heart. Ndisegremo ntima wanga kwa inu wa Malawi. Ngati pali judge otakucheza the justice.
Okay, so going ngati you're breaking up, Alexious, and you were coming up with something very, very. Can you hear me, Alexious? Okay, let's proceed. I like the last part that you just started. We wanted to hear that. Now, before I move on, there's James in the chat. Analemba kuti Alexious, what is the role of the Anti-Corruption Bureau in this mess? Is there anything that you think they can do in their mandate? That was the first question. And then Dr. James Kajampaken said, what is the potential for youth-driven revolution in Malawi? By leveraging your demographic strength, technology, and grassroots organizing, as the youth, you can challenge the status quo and demand better governance. Fusolina, lomuna jokeraso kwa Dr. James Kajampagen, anena kuti, is there legal defense fund established for Alexious? So to answer the last question, I think I can take that one. There is a GoFund page, and if we have Pirira from PIDO International, if you can share that GoFund page, or if we have Onjizan Kenani on the call, please go ahead and share that GoFund page in the chat so that those people who are interested to help this movement, this discourse, they can do so. Let me go ahead and open the mic for Matthews. I see Matthews, I'm sorry. It has taken a minute. Matthews, is that Matthews Gajani from Malawi? What do you have, sir? Do you have a comment, a question? What do you have?
I think I have a question that
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I think by way of introduction, I ran a small grassroots organization known as Mzuzu Youth Anti-Corruption Movement, and in essence, our objective is to garner the contributions of young people and promote collective youth action in the fight against corruption. So basically, we look into issues of accountability, and we also raise awareness and create dialogue at community level in terms of corruption and its impact on public life. But there is one question that we usually are confronted with, and the question is, People usually say that if you look at the nature of corruption in Malawi, it is almost as if it's part of the fabric of the society. So almost like saying what we are seeing at institutions like the judiciary, the executive, maybe at the level of members of parliament, it's more like a reflection of how the wider society in Malawi operates in terms of access to certain services. So how then do we ensure that corruption is fought and fought successfully when corruption itself is part of the fabric of society in Malawi? Thank you.
All right, thank you so very much, Matthews, Kajani. Before we go there, I just want to make sure, Alexious, we are back online. Are you back online?
I am, and I think we should get maybe 2 or 3 more questions so that we can save time.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think that's what we need to do. So I see a hand. Okay, Matthews, I think we have already gone through that, but let me just go through the chats. And those on Facebook Live, like I said, you can also ask your question. We can take that question. So another hand is coming from, nope, we don't have any other hand. But Daniel Due is asking a question. He say, how can we reform the judicial or the judiciary using a judicial leadership that is corrupt? How can we fix this? So that's a question. Of course, James was asking about the GoFund page. Let's start from there. I think those 3 questions, you can take them together, then we can see what we can do. And another one, Mshane Thompson from Facebook Live is also asking a question. Are you reaching out to the international community for support? Thank you.
No, thank you very much for those questions. I think the first one on Matthews. So in terms of corruption being a reflection of our society, it's true a little bit, but it's not true. I want to say that it's true because they say that, and they say that from a good place, that the kind of leaders that you produce are a reflection of the society that you have. Now, the problem, most of the times we look at things on the surface. We just want to understand things on the surface. We don't go deeper. We should then ask ourselves what kind of society we have. The majority of our society is illiterate, and high levels of illiteracy will basically produce leaders that can take advantage of the masses. Now, as well, the people that we produce are not knowledgeable. I think that the leaders are very knowledgeable, but they have decided to leave all the knowledge. They have decided to leave all the principles that they sworn to protect and all that and do something else that is different. So I want to argue to say that actually it's a reflection of our running of affairs as opposed to our society. And why I say this is because majority of Malawians are not corrupt, as people want to argue. There are very few people that are corrupt. There are certain kinds of corruption where people are forced to be corrupt because of how the systems have been corrupted. You should never include, that is not a good practice. That's a form of corruption, but those can be easily dealt with when you have a leadership that is doing things right. So for instance, the corruption that happens on the road, it's corruption where you pay a traffic officer and all that. But that is a corruption that you're put in a place where you can't do otherwise. The corruption that is happening at immigration. You think someone from Kamangila, someone from Karonga all the way, someone from Nsanje, Ngabu, lives in Ngabu to go and bribe someone who lives in Blantyre, somebody who is living in a house with electricity and water. Iyeyo akukhala nyumba yopanda magesi, akukhala nyumba yozira, akukhala nyumba yopanda madzi, amakutunga madzi panjigo. You think that person can wake up from their house to bribe the person that has got a better life? What is happening is that we have created a system where people can't get services without bribing. So people are forced because they have to access the service. We're talking about the hospital, the same thing. So my point is that our society is not corrupt in nature, but we have created a structure that makes it that everyone should be corrupt, and we need to resist, as it were. But on the other side angle, the real corruption, the corruption that really happens and that has led to the decay of our society, is done by less than 2% of our population. Is done by maybe 5% of our, and when you look at the judiciary, so we've been talking about corruption in the judiciary. We have about 50-something judges. But of all these 50-something judges, the corrupt judges, they're not more than 10. So even when you just take a sample of judiciary, the majority of judges, 80% of judges are ethical and they're doing things right. But the 10 that are corrupt, they do too much, that it paints the whole judiciary as corrupt. Now, going further, the corrupt judges sort of amabanga create environment yomwe amene ali olimbigira amene akupanga zoyenera amakhala discouraged. Samapezera kuti akukanika kugwira ntchito ifa kuyang'ana mmene zinthu zikuyendera. It's like if you have a society that promotes or that the people that are corrupt are succeeding and are doing well, it rewards the corrupt people. Then the people that are ethical, they are discouraged. So that's what happens, the effect that happens there. The second question, how we can fix the judiciary using the same judiciary, the law. That's how we can. The law and persistence. Ladies and gentlemen, dear intellectuals and everyone that has joined, the Judicial Service Commission has stayed for about 10 years without doing any investigation on a judge. Why do you think now they are doing this investigation? Do you think they wanted to do this? No, they have been forced by us because we are demanded. So we should start demanding. Once we demand, even the judiciary, even the corrupt people, we're going to do the right thing. But as well as I indicated, the majority of judges are ethical. What will happen is that our citizenry participation, the citizens demanding rule of law and demanding accountability. Once as we are starting to demand accountability, within the judiciary, there's a movement that is coming up. The good judges, the ethical judges, the judges that are not corrupt are rising up and they'll be demanding accountability from their fellow judges. They are the ones, that's our force. As citizens, we should not, so that's the other thing, we shouldn't bend the whole judiciary because we need the judiciary. We need the judiciary for whatever sake, for whatever happens, even if the majority were corrupt, which is not the case, we need to use the same judiciary because we are law of law. We can't go to do violence or to use means that are unlawful and all that. So we're going to fix the judiciary and we're going to use the judiciary, but also we have other constitutional bodies that are supposed to hold the judiciary accountable. So we have Parliamentary Legal Affairs Committee. We have Parliament itself at large. We have the President, who is the head of all these branches. We have the executive. We have Malawi Human Rights Commission. We have Malawi Law Society. All these bodies are meant to hold the judiciary accountable. And these are the people we should demand from. While if anthu asazakuna mizeni dziko lindilatu sila president sila majaji sila parliamentarians dziko lindilatu. We need to wake up and claim our country, ensuring that the bodies that are meant that are created by the constitution should hold the other public officers and other public institutions to be accountable. So we'll use the same judiciary, we'll use the same law, and we're going to be successful. I'm telling you, if we just be awake and persistent and continue the movement that we have started, if we maintain the momentum, a judiciary watu chimena akuyembekeza anthu okubawa akuyembekeza kunena kuti tifoka. All this time what they're doing is akupanga expect kuti tifoka. So tisafoke panopande tiike fire kwambiri mpakana. And even if we do the general elections in September 2025, this movement should continue because anyuani amenaza buswa when I mean anyuani since kunena kuti chipani china chanyuani koma tikasankha chipani tikasankha tikapanga general elections timapasa new mandate. So amenaza kind mandate you, the people who give mandate, we should insist on them to change. And then the final question, are we ready? Am I reaching out to the international community? What I can say is that the international community has been talking about corruption for many years, you know, and when you look back the Martha Zuma scenario, it was the international community that came up. So I have no hope that I don't need to reach out to them. They see what what is happening, and I expect them to act. I don't need them to tell them what to do. They are more informed on the issues of corruption than I am, and I think that they will play their role. But at the same time, as Malawians, we sit down and wait for international community. This is your country. In dziko la inuyo, chifukwa anthu ambiri inu palibe chimene mukupanga. Mungonena kuti tikusapota zimene akupanga Kamangila zindizona. You're not doing anything. This is not about Kamangila. This is about your country. Ana anu, inuyo anyage. Most of you, you are suffering in silence. We need to come out as Malawians and speak out publicly and put the pressure. What we need the pressure. Tingofunika tipereke pressure. Nkhani ikusonjola and zinthu zikuyenda ndipo ziyenda. All we need is to be awake and arise and be energized as much as we can. Over to you, Dr. Mwenya.
All right, thank you so much. I think next time, Alexious, we need to give you like 2 hours, 3 hours, just to have this productive conversation. So before we close, allow me just to take the last set of questions. I see there are very important questions here, and some of these people, they asked these questions earlier on in the chat. So I can scroll back. There's lots of information here. Number one is coming from Bracings. It says, Alexious, why is it that one case of the same nature receive different judgment? Like one person can win the case while other, I think they wanted to say, or the other can lose the same case. Is our constitution porous? That's a question. From Jason Namainja in the chat, Aguti, I read about a paper where it was argued that the PPDA was in a way framed in a way that it yields corruption. How do you view the wording of our laws? How can we improve our laws when it seems politicians have more power over them in these offices? Now, from Jegwa, also asked the question, in a different forum, I heard you suggest that corruption cases involving judges be heard by judges from maybe another country, South Africa. Is there a precedence for such? What are these chances that this could be done? That's another question there. Let me see if I can see one more last question here. I see a comment. Wesley says, Alexious Kamangila, coming eye-opening has been vibrant. The question is, I was unfairly, unlawfully dismissed. The case in the IRC Blantyre Resident Court under Chairman Mr. Sowoya since 2018. There has been no progress till now, 2024. There has been delaying tactics from both the chairman and the respondent. Now that justice is failing to prevail at the IRC, is it too late to engage the ombudsman and to make an independent investigation at the institution and make recommendations for possible reinstatement while the issue is in court? How does this whole thing operate? Okay, there's so many questions here. I think we don't have any more hands. But then on Facebook Live, someone also has asked a question. They said, this is Chifundo Mukesh Ambani Ndamala. It says, what I have observed in Malawi, most of us don't really know what corruption is. We only see corruption when it is being done by third party. We need a holistic approach. What are your thoughts on this one? And then from Clifton Joseph Chamtengo, this says, Alexious Kamangila, what would be your insight in a recent anti-demonstration actions by unknown thugs and Malawi police? Is the reaction against this enough? I think those are enough for us to take and then close up. We've got 9 minutes. Alexious, I'll let the floor for you so you can go ahead and quickly, briefly, just answer these questions and make any comments and closing comments. Then we can close our session for today. I hope next time we're going to have something longer than this. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much. Blessings. First of all, I would really be interested to see the case that you're referring to, but there are instances where I think cases of similar nature have been treated differently. So I can give example of the Indian hemp cases, Chamba case, and I think I was involved in the case of Musa John, who was a young person who was convicted by the magistrate court. And when I did investigations, I did not only find that he was young, but at the same time that he did not actually he was not in possession of that Indian hemp. And up to now, I haven't forgotten that issue, even though he was sentenced to 8 years imprisonment, which didn't make sense because cases of similar nature, even cases where the offenses were worse, and there were adults as well, and people with money, of course, they were given suspended sentences or they were given fines. And so basically it's as a result of lack of accountability by judicial officers. Sometimes we can suspect corruption, and sometimes it can be pure incompetence by a particular judicial officer. Unless when it goes beyond mere incompetence, which then you have the right and you are in the right sense to suspect corruption, as it were. And so, but judgments are meant to, we operate under a precedent kind of system where judgments should speak to each other. One of the main issues that I can speak to in terms of the challenges we have seen in the judiciary is lack of researchers as well. It's important to invest in the judiciary. We need to have researchers for judges. They should be able to read judgments that are coming out. So the way you are able to see what's happening around you in the judiciary is to read judgments that your fellow judges are writing. But how does a judge read judgments from other judges if they themselves can't even write a judgment? We have a lot of judges that are not writing judgments at all for so many years. The case of Susan Namangale, which highlights 14 years of a personal injury matter, and the judge is yet, even up to now, they haven't even given a notice of hearing. It's like that. What I was saying about the middle finger, even in the middle of an investigation, the judiciary has not given an instance of what should be done. I wanted to give an example of a case as well in terms of the different judgments. So, for instance, in the judiciary, so this is an example of pure corruption. You find that the law provides, for instance, that there's a limit within which a resident magistrate can compensate, for instance, 50 million as the limit. But you find judges, for instance, recently there's been a case where a magistrate in Kota, was it in Katabe, his worship Godfrey Nirenda has ended up giving 75 million to a
Alexious, it seems like your internet, something has happened to the internet. But then we've got these 5 minutes. I think, well, if you can hear me, let me go ahead and close up this session. I know we've got lots of things that we wanted to talk about, to discuss. This is an eye-opener. And to the fraternity of intellectuals, wherever you're coming from, whichever school you're coming from, I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us today. Let me take this time just to thank you, Alexious Kamangila, our guest speaker, a PhD student and a human, let's see what is happening here. Okay, a human rights defender So thank you so much. Your insights have really inspired us to think very, very critically and collaboratively about what we should do next. And for ladies and gentlemen, joining from Facebook Live and on Zoom, as we come to the end of today's insightful session, I just want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all of you for your active participation and engagement. This is a conversation. The discussions we have had tonight on how can we collectively fix our broken judicial system, and more specifically, how can we end corruption in the judiciary. This is not just a conversation, it's an ongoing conversation. But at the same time, this is a call to action for everyone or each one of us. So remember, share this. Go on my Facebook page as well. Washington Maine is the page. You can share that so that others can also learn from this session. Nditsegula microphone kwa nonse kuti amene muli ndi mawu omaliza ka mufuna mungoti haleluya zikomo kwambiri mutha kuyankhula. So I'll go ahead and allow you guys to unmute yourself. You can go ahead and unmute your mics now and say your last words. Just say hi, then we're going to close the session.
I am not gonna Thank you very much.
Hi.
Zikomo tatokoza. Thank you.
Hi.
Bye-bye.
Inshallah.
Nice stuff.
Good night, everyone.
Inshallah.
Osagonja Alexious, osagonja. Osaopa. Tatopa ndi utsiru umene ukuchitika. It's too much. It's taken far too long. We need to get
Tatopa. Alexious, we are behind you, Alexious.
Alexious.
You don't say the remote, I say.
Yeah. Muige so my details zanu tufuna tibereke drama to the cause amena kulimbana now. They are not fighting you, they're fighting the nation.
Is this Dr. Daniel Due?
This is me, Dr. Daniel Dube.
Okay.
I'm really angry.
All right, I have your number.
Be angry.
We are really angry. We fought on behalf of Chizuma. We have seen multiple cases of the ombudsman trying to point out wrongs in our government, but we cannot move forward. One thing I want to make clear, Parliament is very different to the judiciary. Anthu parliament amanjenjemerera kwambiri ma judicial. Ndinali ndi proposal imodzi yoti muiganizire bwana pepani sindifuna kutenga msonkhano wanu. Tikufuna kuti tikhale ndi performance review commission tizitha kuona kunena kuti kodi ma judgments akubwerawa akufanana akutenga nthawi yaitali bwanji. Proposal imene ndibweretse mulungu akatipatsa dziko tifuna kubweretsa proposal ya ku Malaysia. You do not kesi ikabwera 5 days paperekedwe chifukwa chomwe kesi sikupitirira 10 days.
Okay, Dr. Due.
Yes.
Dr. Due, please contact me on my my WhatsApp, then we can continue with the conversation. But thank you so much for participating. Thanks, everyone, and you have a good night. Bye.
Thank you.